in the morning, with the startled faces. My name is actually Chuck Yu. Charles is my given name, so apologize if anyone was offended there. After months of preparation, after weeks of practicing, after a few days of anxiety, I think we're actually going to do a real-time audible here. So you guys are in luck. Terry Angelos, our co-founder, is actually here. He's going to do this presentation instead. Everyone cut him a little bit of slack. He just had a baby last week. So he's going to be a little bit sleep deprived, but I'm sure he's going to do great. So Terry, why don't you join me up here?
Thanks, Chuck. Great, thanks everyone for coming. Just a quick show of hands as to who's in the room here. Developers, app developers? You guys? Vendors, ad networks, couple. Guys that sign the checks, VCs. All right. Well, great. Well, thanks for having me. My name is Terry Angelos. I'm a co-founder at TrailPlay. TrailPlay is the earliest pioneer of the value exchange advertising model, where we allow advertisers to support online payments. It's the model that powers Offerwalls today. We run the largest rewards platform on social and mobile. We reach about 100 million consumers a day. But today I wanted to focus on a broader theme and not necessarily talk about TrailPlay. One of the big trends that we see is this connection between online and offline. And it's especially relevant in the mobile world, where you're basically carrying your online identity with you as you, as you sort of walk through the world. And we think that there's a really large opportunity to connect these two worlds, especially for advertisers who have yet found a good way, these offline advertisers haven't found a good way to really connect with online users. So why focus on offline? When they asked Willie Sutton after a 40-year bank robbing career why he robbed banks, he had a very simple answer. He said, that's where the money is. And the same thing applies to offline. About 95% of all commerce happens offline. And that isn't because online isn't growing. It is. It grows at about 15 to 20% a year. It isn't because we don't spend time online. We do. We spend about 3 hours a day online, most of it mobile. It's because that's where I buy my coffee. That's where I fill up with gas. That's where I buy my groceries. And so there's this huge opportunity to influence this offline activity today. And today, no one's quite figured out how to do it. And that's kind of a question that we've been studying. So, if offline is where all the dollars are, where are the advertisers? So let me just kind of give you an example of why you have this disconnect. If you look at a company like Burger King, they spend about $300 million a year in terms of their annual ad budget. And almost none of that is online. If you go to Google right now and search for a burger, there are no paid search ads. That means no one from McDonald's, no one from Burger King, no one from In-N-Out is actually putting a link on Google. That's astounding. And the reason is because these companies haven't figured out how to connect an online click with an in-store transaction. By contrast, if you were to Google banana slicer, which is a significantly smaller market than the $70 billion burger market, there are about a half a dozen ads. eBay, Amazon, even Nordstrom actually sells like a $3 banana slicer. And that's because those companies can figure out the ROI of that online click and how it converts into an actual transaction. And because they have that ROI equation, they know how much to bid and actually now run ads on Google. So we would think a lot about, well, how do you change the economics for offline advertisers? How do you make it interesting for them to have the same kind of measurement online so that they can track their in-store purchases? So here's an example. I'm not sure if you can see that billboard. But this is an example for Starbucks. So Starbucks does a lot of both online and offline advertising. The majority of it is offline. And a big part of their strategy is billboards. This billboard, I think, is at the intersection of about 6 freeways in San Francisco, sees about 170,000 people per day, costs about $30,000 per month. And that's the primary way that Starbucks reaches people locally. But if you were to take a look at just one game, Candy Crush, and compare the number of people playing that game in the same area, we think you can reach about the same size. In fact, this is a map of the Starbucks pretty much near here. It's kind of like a scene out of Best in Show, where the two characters meet at the Starbucks, but not the same Starbucks, the Starbucks that are across the street from each other. So it's pretty high density. And the question we sort of have posed is, well, what if Starbucks can show an ad to a customer in that game half a mile from the store, and find a way for Starbucks to be able to measure whether or not that customer viewed the ad and walked into the store. So I'll give you some examples of how we're doing that and how some other companies are approaching that particular problem. So here are a couple of examples of companies that we think are interesting, that all have a bite at the same apple. They're all trying to close this gap between online and offline. The first is a company called Kip on the left here, and they focus on, they basically focus on real-world rewards and delivering them at the point of achievement inside of the game. So if you reach a certain level, as a way of congratulating you for reaching level 42 in a game, you will get this real-world coupon. In this case, it's a probiotic smoothie, and you give them your email address, they'll email you a coupon. You still have to walk into the store and show the coupon to get your reward. But again, it's a way that this company is trying to reach an online audience in a way that they couldn't reach them before. The second is a company called Shopkick. They're basically a rewards or kind of loyalty app where they encourage you to walk into a store, you scan certain items, you accrue this virtual currency, which you can then redeem for discounts on those items. So they're creating a reward mechanism for you to walk into the store and then get sort of discounts on the items that you like. The third is a company called Plink. They do something similar to Shopkick, but they focus specifically on the transaction. So if you transact in store, they will accrue a currency, and then you can get discounts on future transactions. And all these companies are trying to create this bridge between online and offline. One example that we really like, and it's particular to the gaming industry in terms of bridging this gap, is a company called Play Studios. They have a game called My Vegas. It's a casino game available on Facebook right now and on mobile pretty soon. And it's a casino game in its own right, but the virtual currency that you earn, you can redeem for real-world rewards in Vegas. So you can literally redeem your virtual currency for tickets to see Cirque du Soleil, or one free night at the Mirage. And the thinking here, actually, the company is backed by MGM, is that these are very valuable customers to MGM. And if I can get you to come to Vegas this weekend as opposed to next weekend by giving you a free hotel room, that's ROI positive. If I can comp you a show, you might take the $200 that you would have spent on the show and spend it on the casino floor. And it's a really cool way of reaching out to this audience that is ROI positive for these offline advertisers and bringing people into their kind of physical stores. We think this is something that other companies will replicate. One of the nice things about these rewards is that basically expire, and at some point, the cost of the hotel room becomes zero at about midnight. So it's a really cool mechanism to bring people into the hotels. A few other examples. This is a game from Crowdstar called Covered Fashion. It's basically a fashion discovery app where you create virtual designs, and the community votes on those designs. And if you happen to be the most voted design, you can then win one of the items that you're showcasing. In this case, it's a Kashimi badge. I don't know fashion very well. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but apparently it's worth a lot of money. And the user here actually is eligible to basically receive that bag From the advertiser perspective, what's interesting is they're getting all this free exposure. So you've got customers who are, first of all, spending time and energy focusing on these brands. They're sharing them, that's how they get the votes. They share them within the app, they share them on Facebook, they share them on Pinterest. So there's a lot of exposure to the brands behind this, and it's another way that you're able to influence an online customer and provide kind of real-world example, a real-world reward for that experience. Kind of another trend that we're watching in terms of bridging the online to offline divide is basically some sort of augmented reality experience. And not all of these are linked to commerce, but there were two that we found interesting. One is called Gold Run. They are a photo sharing app. Basically, walk around a city and you're taking photos as part of the game mechanic, and that's how you advance in the game. And many of the photos that you're taking are linked to brands. So you might be discovering a new restaurant, you might be discovering a new boutique, a new hair salon. And as you walk around and experience this real-world kind of environment, you then are given rewards for that experience. And this is, I think, still the early days of kind of connecting these two worlds. But this is something that we think is interesting and a trend that we're watching. The second one is called Ingress. It's actually a studio that Google owns. They have their own game development studio. They create kind of prototype games. This has no link to commerce yet, but the whole point of the game is to immerse yourself into a physical environment, and that's the arena in which you actually compete and play. And if you think about the opportunities for advertising and commerce, when you add Google Maps, maybe Google Glass, maybe this game is something that eventually sort of moves to that environment. You have a very interesting way that you can connect real-world local advertisers to the gameplay. Again, something that we think is coming down the line. So let me tell you something that's live today. This is the TrailPlay experience, and our approach has been to focus on everyday shopping habits. So what we get excited about is the fact that U.S. consumers spend about $2.5 trillion annually in retail stores. That's a huge part of the economy. And many of those transactions are influenced by some sort of online research. So every person in this room holding onto their mobile device is going to make an in-store transaction, probably today. So how do we connect these two worlds? Well, in the TrailPlay experience, what we've done, we're skipping ahead here. So in the TrailPlay experience, you have a game. In this case, you're earning stars. That's the virtual currency. And you can earn stars by shopping at any of these real-world stores. You can shop at Gap. You can walk into Burger King and buy a burger. You can walk into Body Shop. And these offers appear alongside online offers. And the experience is you basically register your payment card with us. We actually don't need the full payment card, we just need the last 5 digits. We don't charge the card. And then when you walk into that store and make the purchase, we intercept the transaction via the payment network. So we integrated with Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and some of the payment processors. And that's how we can track the online to offline experience. You don't need a coupon, you don't have to show something to the person behind the cash register. In fact, the person in the store has no knowledge of the transaction. So this is just one approach that we're taking. We think this is early on, and we actually we have a few kind of iterations of this experience. But this is a real way to tap into what we think is a very, very large opportunity for advertisers to reach out and actually influence the hundreds of millions of consumers that are walking around with their phones every day and their eyes pointed at that screen as opposed to a billboard or a TV. And then the actual experience is pretty incredible. These are some photos of our customers and some of our employees having their well-deserved in-store experience. You've got Andrew Shepard from Caban enjoying his Starbucks. It's one of our employees at Gap. That's Kurt Burton from PopCap who's enjoying his Starbucks. And it's a really cool experience. You walk into the store, the moment you swipe the card on the authorization, we're notified, and then your phone beeps. So before you even sign the receipt, you've got your virtual currency. And our thinking here is, how do you connect an everyday habit like buying coffee with hopefully an everyday habit like checking into your game? So I buy a cup of coffee, I get a free life in Candy Crush. That's a pretty cool symbiotic experience where the advertiser, Starbucks, the developer, King, and hopefully the consumer is getting something of value. The other nice thing is once you have that payment card stored, you don't have to register it again and again as you go and do additional offers. So we're pretty excited about this. So how big is this market? If you look at retail sales originating online outside of gaming, this is a thriving industry. There's some studies that say over $1 trillion of retail sales are influenced by online research. This is everything from Googling the specialized cycling shoes that I want to buy to trying to find the nearest Starbucks. So online is this kind of assistance that's powering about $1 trillion in offline spend. And there are a couple of other companies today that are trying to tackle this opportunity outside of gaming. So on the top you have a bunch of companies that really focus on bank statements. So when you go to Bank of America and you check your online statements, there are a whole bunch of companies that basically have these card-linked offers that encourage you, to get up off your couch at some point and actually walk into a store and buy something, and the discount is preloaded onto your card. There are a few other companies that I think are doing interesting things in this space. There's a company called Euclid, which is the same team that did Urchin, which later became Google Analytics. And their view is to basically create the same analytics in store as you have online. Basically what happens is when you walk into a retail experience, they have a Wi-Fi signal, your phone connects to that network, and now they can track you as you walk around the store. I'm not sure about the privacy issues just yet, but it's a pretty cool way to figure out who's walking into your store, where they're going, do they purchase. The one missing element there is that they don't necessarily know who you are prior to walking into the store. So the space we think is pretty interesting. We look to what people are doing outside of gaming as a positive trend, because we think the opportunity for entertainment is huge. Today, without a doubt, gaming and entertainment is the largest use case on a mobile device. People spend more time actually engaged in their phone playing games than they do anything else. And so the folks in this room really command the attention of hundreds of millions of consumers. And we think this is a much better opportunity, a much bigger opportunity than a bank statement audience in order to influence customers and actually get them to walk into a store. And of course, have that positive feedback loop in your game, in your app. So I wanted to end with just a couple of examples of what's working today. We've been live with this O2O experience for about 4 or 5 months now. It's still rolling out. These are some of the advertisers that we have live, by category. So a big one is food. And food is something that you pretty much have to do every day. I haven't kind of gotten away from that particular task. You have to buy food every day. It's very often a discretionary purchase. Do I go to Maruichi on Castro Street, or do I go to Stakeout? So you can influence that purchase because you're open to that kind of influence. We focused on the QSR market, kind of the kind of quick serve market, large national brands. One of the big problems of local is you lose density. So it's really hard to get whatever the million offline businesses are into one app. But what we can do is focus on national brands. Burger King's got 4,500 stores around the country, and so that gives us a lot of reach when we work with Burger King. Same with Jamba Juice, not quite the same number of stores, but it's a large national chain. Clothing is a big sort of category for us. Again, there's a lot of discretion about where you shop, about how much you spend, and we find that we can influence people's purchase behavior by providing this kind of reward mechanism. And then beauty is a large category. So over half the people who play games are female. and this is a really kind of cool reward mechanism, usually something that's a highly discretionary purchase. It's a reward you give to yourself, and we find that that's a category that works very well in our environment. So I think I would just sort of leave you with a question. Hopefully I've sort of shown the case that there's a large opportunity, and really I think the challenge is out to you as to how can you tap into what we think is a very large growing market, and both from a monetization perspective and in terms of improving the game mechanics. So with that, I think I'll take questions if there are any. Yes.
How hard was it to actually do the technical integrations with the point of sale system for Burger King or Jamba Juice? How long did that take?
Yeah, so the question is, how difficult is it to plug into the point of sale systems for Burger King and other retailers? So we decided to focus on the payment networks. So the nice thing about working with Visa and MasterCard and Amex is that they run on all the POS systems. If you try to integrate with the POS systems, you really have to have, there are dozens and dozens of companies that sort of provide that entry point. We actually also intercept transactions at the payment aggregator level. So there's a company called First Data, and they power a whole sort of big swath of point of sale transactions. So it's a lot of work. Visa, Amex, and MasterCard really only sort of work with a handful of companies, and they're still trying to figure out what's the best way to kind of share this data. So that has been a big kind of 2-year effort for us to get that up and running. What's really nice about the experience is that it's instant. There's no delay once you're on the payment network, and that's pretty reliable. Yes?
Just curious, the core to your strategy around, for example, Burger King and credit cards, et cetera. How does that change in a world of mobile wallets? Is there the opportunity to maybe disintermediate the payers, or is there something else that you would do moving forward if that gains traction?
Yeah, so the question was, how does this opportunity change as you add mobile wallets, which I think are coming and effectively sit between sometimes the consumer with the POS device and the merchant. That's already happening. If you look at Starbucks today, they came out with some numbers that 30% of all of their transactions are on their loyalty card, and about 10% are from their mobile wallet, which is an astounding number. And now their partnership with Square, they're going to extend that whole payment mechanism. The nice thing about working through the payment networks, again, those transactions still run on the Visa and MasterCard networks. No one's disintermediated, the payment network yet. And so for Starbucks, if they want to work with us, we don't care whether the payment is coming from the Starbucks wallet. If 100% of transactions come from the Starbucks wallet, or if they come from somebody swiping their card, as long as that card is registered as eligible for the promotion, the consumer gets the deal. And obviously everything we're doing here is with Starbucks, Starbucks permission. Yeah?
Yeah, so I didn't mean so much disintermediating the payment company in the sense of payments. I mean, it almost seems like it would be just as easy to skip all that and just have sort of an API hook into whatever was generating the coupon or whatever that basically said, okay, look, the mobile wallet says that you're transacting this coffee purchase at Starbucks, and that kind of, the data flow would go directly to some central database.
Yeah, we hope that happens. I mean, if enough retailers expose these APIs, then developers can integrate directly with them. Kind of, from our perspective, I think our experience is that that's not really going to happen. Starbucks has never, they've probably heard of Candy Crush, but they haven't heard of Kingdoms of Camelot. And we know because we talk to them a lot. They're not really, kind of focused on these markets. Maybe there are other kind of reward mechanisms, and I think that eventually is where this goes, right? If you can have a way to confirm a transaction that's pretty cool. For the most part, though, the experience starts inside of the game, right? Like, we don't want to just reward you for walking into a Starbucks. We want to get you to choose Starbucks over Pete's, and to do that, you want to find the consumer, in some sort of entertainment. Maybe they're reading the New York Times, and you reach the 11th article for the month, and now you have to clear your cookies or pay. And so, maybe Starbucks will fund that next transaction. So we sort of, our customer really is the New York Times, and we try to get, we're providing a service to them. So Starbucks would have to make that available to all those, to all those online merchants. So, yes.
Do you get retroactive access to the sales database? So if I go to Burger King for lunch now and then go home and sign up, export that code, can I get credit for that reward?
So the way that our kind of process works today, we don't need the historic data, because you sign up. You have to sign up first, and then you go into the store. But we are looking at sort of extending that. So actually, the Burger King example is a great one. That's an evergreen promotion. Every time you go in, you are rewarded. So we're going to track every single Burger King transaction on that card and reward you accordingly. And of course, Burger King controls this, right? In every case, we have the offline advertiser who's saying how much they want to reward, and so they're in control of that. There are some interesting things we could do potentially with historical data. I think that's kind of a different topic perhaps, but we are looking at some things there that I think are pretty interesting. Great. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you for your time, and hopefully this was helpful.